forward to be able to see everything. We're obviously going to go over everything on each slide, but just if you'd like to be able to see a little bit better, we understand if you need to move forward.
So as you know, about 2 weeks ago we sent out a survey, and we're going to present on the results of those surveys and any follow-up questions that we have. Next slide, please. So, no, this is a survey from about 2 weeks ago. Oops. All right. So the responses, there's about 150. Just to note, some of them, they had multiple responses from the same household. So, husband and wife might have answered differently or the same. 44.5% wanted to go with option B, which was buying Highland Park. 33.6% wanted to go with option A, which is to continue on with the current approach of pursuing a new church building in Schertz. About 10% wanted option C, which was to sell Orland Park here and then lease Highland Park. Bob, come on in. Bob's our coordinator. We don't want to be alone up here. Option D, I forget about how many percentage it was, maybe about 8%, wanted to keep Orland Park, lease Highland Park at the same time. And then there were also a smattering of other, maybe 10% or so of different options. Most of them, however, were essentially variations on what was on the main 2 or 3. So there wasn't a whole lot of, I would say, novel ideas that we hadn't thought of. Yeah. Which was to possibly building the hall in Schertz first, and then buying Highland Park to build Schertz. So.
No, sorry, that's 2 different things.
Sorry, buying.
Sorry. To build a hall at Schertz first so that we can move faster. That was someone's idea. Or buy Highland Park, which was not something we discussed as an option, to then build Schertz. We've really only discussed leasing it if we still intend to pursue Schertz. Excuse me. So.
Okay. Next slide, please. So for option A, to keep the current church and to wait for the new church in Schertz, this was the, I'd say, second most popular option. The benefit of this was that it avoids splitting funds. It's a new build. It could be Catholic from the start. It has the support of Father Purdy and the SSPX. There would be a rectory on the property. There's already a house there right now. The location is rural. Some people said that was a benefit, and there are opportunities for people to move to Schertz to live closer to the church. They did have some people in their support for option A said that Highland Park, which is options B through D, that there were concerns about Highland Park area in terms of crime and safety, and then also concerns about Highland Park's age and current structure and maintenance, etc. Next slide, please. So for option B, which was to sell current church, Orland Park, and to buy Highland Park, a lot of people said that they wanted to do this based on the results of the inspection, which we have not done yet. We'll get to that in future slides. It does immediately solve the standing room only dilemma and anticipation of future growth of St. Joseph's. Sure.
We did get clarification on St. Timothy's, or Tim's, I don't know, Timothy's. The bishop himself said there is no intention to end the Latin Mass there. Now and in the future, he wrote. So Brett was kind to solicit that information. So we do not necessarily anticipate growth from St. Timothy's parishioners.
Okay. Other reasons people voted for this option, and this was the option that garnered the most support, is that it solves the potential loss of new would-be parishioners. It's more affordable. Folks said that they felt like there was an unlikelihood of raising enough funds for Schertz. It's also a faster solution, unlike having to pursue the Schertz timeline, which is a year or two, or Gotcha. So,
And perhaps for those of you who do not recall, just a reminder, depending on how you want to put it, liberal or conservative estimate of shirts, meaning they're kind of overestimating the total cost, but we're looking at around $5 million. Right now, again, Highland Park is listed for 1.9? 1.7.
Yeah, 1.7.
But then they have discussed bringing it down to 1.2 for us.
so there are also concerns about the other reasons people voted for this were concerns about the state of current St. Joseph's, and people were excited that we have the funds in the bank for the purchase and some of the repairs, presumably the repairs that we would need. And then, oh yeah, folks also said that they thought it was beneficial that because Highland Park is more immediately tangible than a shirts build, there would be more motivation. This is people theorizing that there would be more motivation to have benefit of fundraising projects for specific things, such as, oh, let's say the furnace. Not that I know that it needs to be, but let's say the furnace at Highland Park needs to be replaced. People said that, oh, we could, have a specific fundraising goal that they thought would be more beneficial because it's something that's more tangible than something on paper. Next slide, please. There were a few other reasons for support for Highland B, and once again, we just tried our best to, for Highland Park, we tried our best to summarize from all of the great comments that folks gave. They liked the location of staying in San Antonio, not going to somewhere like Shirts. Most people said it was neither better nor worse, and they liked the fact that it was close to the historic missions. They also cited the quality of the construction of 1950s versus a build today. They also like the fact that it has a 3-story building attached to it that could be used as a school, and they said that it was beautiful and that it could easily be made Catholic, because right now it's Lutheran. Next slide, please. For option C,
I was going to just point out the next two slides, option C and D, are looking at Highland Park again as a stepping stone. So we don't have a ton of comments specifically. A lot of people are thinking, okay, what's the benefit of Shirts? What's the benefit of Highland Park? And that's why the first two options are more full of comments. These had fewer that were specific to the lease option.
so the one comment that stood out for the lease option was that they thought we could possibly be able to rent nearby space for a rectory in Highland Park. Next slide. And then for option D, they thought that holding on to the current property holding on to Orland Park was a kind of important for the security, but we would move mass and activities, but just kind of hold on to this as a backup. Next slide. Other general comments that we saw and kind of reoccurring were that we should, or that we could expand overflow seating here at Orland Park outdoors to kind of give folks more room and potentially stem the loss of new parishioners. We should improve communications with regular updates. We should demolish part of Highland Park or purchase adjacent lots nearby to expand parking. That's obviously kind of if we were to go with Highland Park. If we were to lease. There's also the lease to purchase option, which would allow us to build equity, and I think somebody said we should try to maintain a right to first offer. There were concerns about the division of congregation regardless of which approach we went with. There were concerns about Shirts property, whether it was in a flood zone, if there was enough cry room space, parking, all of this based off of kind of rough drafts of what we've had so far. There's also the question that if we pursue Highland Park, is the Shirts project ended 100%? I guess we can talk about that coming up, Bob. And then folks also thought that maybe we could flip Highland Park. We could purchase it and flip it for a profit.
Flip it meaning update it for our own needs for however long we need it, and until Shirts is built. If we invest in it, would we maybe get our money back? I think realistically, looking at that, the answer is no.
Yeah, there aren't.
Putting that out there.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason we say that is, once again, I'm not a realtor. I'm just a volunteer. But most people aren't looking to buy 70-year historic traditional churches. So I think that's why investing in it. I think purchasing it to invest in it and then later flip it is not realistic. And then folks also talked about possibly expanding the Shirts plans. At this point, based off of what I've heard, I think that might be unfeasible, and I think Father Purdy has made the maximum amount of adjustments on the plans for that. So, next slide. There were some questions on whether funds need to be reached for each phase of the Shirts project. There was some questions about whether Highland Park had side access to pews, meaning
someone perceived from some of the photos that there was only a center aisle going down Highland Park, not access from, center aisle, no side aisles, but there in fact are.
Are there, Brett?
Yes.
Okay. So, there were also questions about why Highland Park was for sale. Some people cited concerns over crime, taxes. I think we know the answer to that. It's declining attendance. It was, I think, thousands of people were attending it in the school in the 50s and 60s, and now, like unfortunately many churches, they're down to 20 or so people. So that's the reason they're selling it, as far as we know, to the best of our ability. But we know the congregation there is really small.
That's what their parents were.
Gotcha. Other folks were concerned, or another suggestion people said was to first build a pre-engineered hall at Shirts so that we can move sooner. So instead of going church first, go hall first, that we could use for church, for mass. Other folks were concerned about if we did something other than option A, which is pursuing Shirts. They were concerned that they had donated to something specifically in mind, and that we were, not we, but that the society would be kind of changing the, what they had donated their money to.
And to answer that, essentially when we're giving our money to the building fund, it's going into the hands of the society, really. I mean, we can tell them our interests and passions and what we want, but it's ultimately up to them. So I hope nobody is disheartened by whatever choice is made in terms of, oh, I gave my money expecting this, because we really can't have those, what am I trying to say?
Expectations.
Yeah, firm.
Unless you're going to fund the whole project.
Unless
So,
you just want to buy one of them and then provide it for everybody.
so other folks said that Highland Park was an obvious choice if Shirts wasn't already purchased, and there was concerns over sunk costs. Other folks said that buying Highland Park as a semi-permanent buy Highland Park as a semi-permanent option, and that it would relieve pressure to finish Shirts in kind of a rush timeline. And then I think the last thing to end on here is that folks thought the best option was we should focus on the best option to save more souls as opposed to what is more financially viable. Next slide. So I think now we'll open it up to questions that folks had. Were there any questions on the slides that we did not answer? Yes, sir.
The value of the church property, what can we recoup from that? If you buy Highland Park, can we use that funds to renovate? What was the value of the church property?
Sorry, church or Shirts?
We will address that on the next slide.
Yeah, great question.
Second question. The property here is split up. There's a completely vacant lot that we don't do anything with. Can we sell that to help fund some of this and split it up? We have the lot, the rectory that we use now, and then some additional property here. We split this up instead of selling it as a whole, or is that not financially the best idea?
Yeah, so the question was, so the property here at Orland Park, there's the rectory, the church, and then I believe a lot. Could we kind of carve off pieces and divvy it up in terms of what would be most financially prudent? And yeah, I would say the suggestion of the folks who've been on the committee recently is we should get this property appraised as well as the Shirts property, just so we know what we have. Doing nothing more than just appraising it, but just to see what
As a
the
baseline.
Yeah, as a
Under set.
baseline.
I do also have something for that, but right. So, now if Bob can back me up on this, I don't think carving up our current property is necessarily feasible, right? Because we do have the mission tours that come up like every other couple of years. Right. People camp out on that lot, and sometimes when we have overflow parking, there are cars that have to park out on the grass. So it's carving out that lot is not necessarily a viable option.
I'm parked there right now.
Talking about the lot on the other side of the. On the other side, not where it's not. On the other side of the rectory, on the other side of the house, that's ours as well.
So clarify that.
I mean, that is.
Okay.
So we
Never mind.
own, Bob, if you can clarify, so we own here the church property, the parking lot, the empty lot, the first house as the rectory, and then a second lot on the other side of it. Oh, I'm sorry.
Any other questions?
Is there an option to scale down what we're trying to build at Shirts to be like a barn dominium so that it's more functional versus beautiful? Like just more space in general to where it's like half the price? No, it's gotta be beautiful, got it.
Yeah, no,
Just wanna make sure.
yeah. Now, the option to build the parish hall first, that was brought up very early on, and it was shot down because, no, we want a church, you know, that's the most important thing is have a church. I'm not necessarily in agreement with that. I thought it might not be a bad idea to build a parish hall, you know, where we see, more people while we're building the church, but, that was shot down.
Could everybody hear Mr. Schrader?
Mr. Gerardo.
If we decide to buy the Highland Park Church, do you know what's going to be the time it's going to take for the society to decide and approve the purchase?
We are projecting with time for approvals that we would move in about 6 months from now.
And, for me, what I would suggest, I don't know if it's feasible, we have the property church, and I would hate to see that, lot get sold because it serves the people that comes from Austin. For me, ideally, we could actually buy the property in Highland Park, then down the road build also the church. For me, that would be the best because then we would be able to serve people from Austin and from the Los area.
So
The church in Highland Park would be served. The purpose would be to serve the people that is more south of San Antonio.
So I'm sorry, are people camping on the property at Shirts? You say when it would serve people from Austin.
You'll have two churches, a
Oh,
Southern
are they that?
Society Church and Northern.
But would they really be that far apart? It's probably like 10 minutes or 20 minutes difference, right?
About like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the reasons why, I guess church was less expensive in regards to the cost of the land, but eventually, Austin is going to. There's a church in Highland Park, and it's pretty and actually nice. We can get inside, and it will solve the main problem, which is the capacity. But at the same time, if we want to create a community, the area around the church property it makes more sense because of the crime of the south part. Now, hopefully, I don't know, it might actually happen. I don't remember if the area around Highland Park has been, sometimes the city will deem a area like historical. And if that happens, they may be revival of the area, may actually improve. But I mean, I see the benefits on both sides. Some people live in the north side, and some other people live in the south side.
Gotcha. Yep. Yes, sir.
In reference to his comments, we drove around there quite a bit on Wednesday. We had a chance to go into the church and see everything. The housing there is a mixed bag, of course. A lot of people have purchased there and updated their houses and really fixed them up. I think there's a potential for a residential community development over time as people decide, okay, I want to go do the church. It's not as down. This is a, you know, old neighborhood, old German neighborhood. I think it has promise, and I think there's a lot of homes that could be very acceptable for most folks.
Gotcha.
Did we get an answer on the stages of the Schertz build? Like they have to have the funds before we can get the stages?
Yeah, as I understand it, we have to have the funds before they'll let us start construction. So far, they've given us permission to design the building, and then, you know, when we get the bid, you know, we get some actual costs, then we'll know, you know, if we're okay or not. So yeah, and as far as phases go, the only phases we have so far, build the church, then the parish hall. Those are the phases that we have. So
So can we get
Yeah.
100% confirmation on that, or do we have that?
well, from what I've, you know, my experience is that yes. Now, it is possible that we can get a, what do they call that? My sister is in it goes to the Memphis chapel there, and they're doing the same thing we are. Well, actually, they bought an existing property, are going to move into it. They got a loan from the society in anticipation of them selling their current location, and then when they sold that money would just go back to the society. We could probably do the same thing for this. You know, we could probably get a loan for what we would get from this property right away, so we wouldn't have to wait for that. But that is, you know, not, I haven't verified that, no. But we can work, those are things we can work on. So we'll have more, you know, while we're doing the appraisal and the inspection, then we can work on those kind of questions, get them answered.
Is there a way to know exactly how much we have on the building fund?
Yeah, I believe that's in the presentation from 2 weeks ago. Good
Which
question.
was attached. If you go back to your emails, if you're on Flockno, and you received the emails to invite you to participate in the survey, it had the presentations from 2-3 weeks ago, and it said exactly how much we have. I don't want to misspeak, so I forget.
Can we have monthly updates?
We are discussing, yeah, as a team, providing, maybe planning a specific Sunday, like second Sunday of every month, doing an update. So, yeah, go ahead.
When I don't know if y'all remember, we used to have a newsletter that Marisol
Alvarez.
she put together, so every month I would give her an update on how much we had collected in the building fund, and she would put that in what our collections are, so we can do that again. It's no problem.
And if I think for the sake of time, we will move on to the next slide. Do you wanna-
So yeah, so next steps would be to update Father Purdy on the.
This is the plan. Just to clarify, we're doing it, right?
Yes.
Sorry.
So the plan is to update Father Purdy on the results of the survey and the meetings that we've had.
To that end, I talked with Father Zagrang this morning about setting up a meeting with Father Purdy. Father Purdy's had a death in his family, is actually in St. Mary's, Kansas currently. He'll be back sometime this week, so I can't guarantee you that I'm going to have that meeting set up this week. So, but I am working on that, and as soon as I'm going to send an email to Father so he can put it on his calendar and we can get ready to go with that. So that meeting with Father Purdy is going to contain all of the information that we have right now, all of the options, what we're talking about, and then request some information from him also. Yeah. Right. So we're gonna. What our intents are is to talk with Father Purdy to see if we can get this. We're going to get 3 quotes from third-party inspectors to investigate the Highland Church property, so we know what we're getting into. We've had some options from people within the congregation here. Oh, I know an inspector. He'll go and do it. Some that are really in favor of Highland Park. Some that are really in favor of Schertz. We're looking at getting an independent. We're going to pay an independent, not associated with our church at all. Tell me what this is going to do and what we're going to have to do. We're trying. One of my main deals with Father Purdy is to get him to pay for that third one, that one independent, so that we know exactly what we're getting into with Highland Park. Follow up with the inspections with the general contractor, so that we know kind of what the costs are going to be if we purchase Highland Park, so we have a really good idea before we move forward. These are our next steps, and this is what I'm going to be talking with Father Purdy about. We do need to schedule a At the same time, an appraisal so we know what our properties are, the value of our current property is, both in Schertz and here at Orland Park. All of the lots, but I may see if we can talk with that appraiser about maybe if we chop up the different ones to your question to see if we could do that right away. Yeah, we don't do anything on that one anyway. Correct. So we'll get an appraisal on those, on each part of those, each parcel on those lots is what our plan is also. I appreciate that. So, and then we'll follow up with our meetings. Like I said, we were kicking around in our meetings with ourselves over there about second Sunday of each month, coming with you guys and saying, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing, this is what I found out. Some of those meetings will be real short. Hey, we have this much money, we got this much plan, that's where we're at. Some of those meetings may be, hey, looks like the designs are finalized, we're moving forward, and we're doing this and this and this. One of the next few meetings is going to have answers to these questions, which is going to be pretty important for a lot of you. And again, with Eric's help and Brett's help, we're going to be putting all of this into the Flock Note, so you'll be able to, if you're not able to attend the meetings, you'll be able to see what we talked about and hear what we're talking about.
So great comments from Brooke. I'd say, yeah, the current approach that we're proposing to Father Purdy is to kind of do two things at once, not steer off of the Schertz, the plans for Schertz, so continue on with that, but at the same time, because the majority of the people voted for option B, to pursue getting at least more information on costs, repairs, etc. Sure. So
Correct. It is not the majority, over 50%, but we looked at it this way. Considering options, the greatest number of people wanted to simply outright buy Highland Park. A smaller number, but still the second most significant, only want to pursue our new building of Schertz. The other two major options were still stepping into Highland Park. And so no matter, that just contributes to, again, the need of investigating that as the next step, whether we choose to buy or propose a lease.
It's theoretically an option. We have not proposed that directly to them yet.
But Brett spoke.
So sorry, Joe. I understand that now Bob had a meeting with their parish coordinator. Now they still have to have their own meeting at their parish and decide what they're going to do with Highland Park. But as of right now, they're not accepting any lease officers. That's how we got the price lowered from 1.7 million to 1.2 million. You're correct.
They could go either way. Maybe those in that camp, some of them would probably say, you know what, we need something now, and they would go to the buy Highland Park. Some of them would probably say, no, okay, if leasing isn't an option, we're going to wait it out.
Either way, there's enough people that have the interest in the Highland Park that we have to pursue it, which is what my next steps are with Father Purdy. So I'm going to get with Father Purdy as soon as I can and see if we can get that moving forward. So
We don't have the A-OK from the society or Father Purdy.
we do have the A-OK from Father Purdy to look into doing the inspections and stuff. My question for him is if he's truly allowing us to go through with that, if he's going to pay that $2,000 to $3,000 inspector to come over there and do it. He can write me a check for that, or write a check, not me. He can write a check for that person for that. And that's what I'm going to try to press him on. Hey, if you're really going to help us with this, help us get this done so we know what we're doing. That's what our next plan is. So that's the gist of my, plus maintaining what we have, getting the information that we have on the Schertz project.
He gave us verbal consent, but he has not signed a check. We haven't presented him. This is the inspector we're hiring.
And we wanted this information so I have something to back me up when I'm talking to Father. Look, a lot of them, 44% plus another 9% if we want to. This is important to us, and it solves a lot of our problems immediately. To see if I can get him leased that pay for the inspections that won't have to come from us. So we'll see what happens with that. I can't, fingers crossed, but we'll see what happens.
So yeah, that's what I'm concerned about. His permission, his going ahead to help.
We have his permission anyway. So if somebody wanted to pay for that third insurance, we can go and get that done right now anyway. what I'm trying to do is get Father tied into the Highland Park project, and if he pays for it, then I know he's at least invested into a little bit so we can see what's going on with it. That's my goal. If he says, no, I'm not gonna pay for it, then we're gonna come back and we're gonna say, listen, I need $3,000 for somebody to come over to do an inspection, or however it costs. We're getting the 3 quotes from the third party. I don't know what they cost yet, I haven't seen that, but as soon as I have that, that's part of the information that I'm giving the Father, so, Father Purdy.
And we do have the ball rolling on that. I want to iterate too. Kaylee, who we introduced at our last meeting, she couldn't be here this week. Kaylee Miller is in-house realtor. She's not a commercial realtor, but she is confident in her ability to secure quotes from 3 different reputable inspectors. And she's doing that now. She's already in the process of gathering those, reaching out to those inspectors and getting their estimate or quotes for what they will charge to come inspect Highland Park. And from those three, we will choose which one we want to pursue, present that to Father Purdy.
Correct.
Okay. How many people will attend this church, and how long did it take to get to what we have in the bank?
I think that's a Bob question.
79, right?
I mean, we've been collecting money in the building fund since I've been here 30 years.
Parish director, I believe it says there's about 755 people. With 10 mass, we usually have close to 800 that actually attend mass. Can you read regularly?
Yeah.
150. Some of them duplicates from the same household.
Right. So.
You know, the amount of money in the building fund has increased significantly in the last, 10 years, 8, 10 years, since we really started looking seriously.
Like, I have a follow-up. Like, how many people with 2 masses can we have at the Highland?
So my wife was asking how many people at both masses can we have at Highland Park?
Each mass there says about 500, you said?
You know, up to 1,000, I would say.
Combined between the 2 masses.
So is it still an option, are you still thinking of renting a place, a rectory there for Father, so he wouldn't have to be traveling back and forth?
Someone suggested that, but we wouldn't plan on selling shirts right away, probably. Again, it's all up to Father Purdy
Right.
at the start, but we do have the shirts
So,
housed.
so yeah, I mean, the option, okay, so the question is, where would the priest stay if we went with Highland Park? So I think there's a few options depending upon what we would do, because there's all sorts of different, iterations of what is possible. We could keep the shirts property and the priest could stay there. The other option is that if we're doing renovations, I mean, there is an attached 3-story building, school, right with Highland Park. It's not outfitted, with an apartment right now, but I'm assuming if we were putting a big capital project in for renovations, repairs, etc., it probably would not take much to turn part of that school into a private apartment or apartments for priests. So I'm just coming up with that on my own right now as an option, as a potential solution, right? You could take some of the money and the priest could stay right on the property right there. We've also talked last meeting about there's a house across the street that could potentially be for sale or purchasing something else in the area. Lots of different options. I think we could confidently say that whatever we did, we would make sure we had a place for the priest to stay.
Unrelated, real quick, just for honesty and not bias on my part, I realize I've been saying it was listed at 1.7. It was actually listed at 1.9 million. But again, we still have a verbal offer for 1.2 million to buy it from them. So I just want to make that clear. It is on the market for 1.9 million, not 1.7.
It's a question or additional comment. Since Highland Park has all this additional auxiliary rooms and plumbing and the bathrooms, we could possibly, or I think we could do an adaptation for Father's quarters, so it's simpler than what we have now, but we could accommodate him there without even purchasing building across because it's additional.
I think that's what Joe was.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yes.
Yeah, to convert part of the 3-story school, just separate it out as apartments for the priests.
100%.
I mean, and maybe that's once again, just speaking off the cuff here, maybe that's a temporary solution, right? Until a few years down the road, maybe that's a semi-permanent solution, Either way, there's a 3-story building attached to it with a whole lot of wet walls and things that you could use to turn into a bathroom or something. So, yes, sir. Yeah, the question was we should continue to look into, expanding parking options at Highland Park, and that is, yes, that's also something we would look at too.
There was a,
Yeah, there's a school that's closed across the property. We could potentially use that parking
Yeah.
space.
there seems to be some options that wouldn't put us in,
A lot of strain.
we're not without options for expanding parking at Highland Park.
Yep, good question. Well, I know folks have to go and other folks have to get ready for mass.
Next
So,
slide,
next slide.
We just have our links again to join Flocknote if you're not already on it, and to donate to the building fund if you want to come scan them.
Thank you, everybody.